Okay, it looks like. All righty, we're ready to go.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Larry Klein, and welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. Andy, may we have the roll call?
Campbell.
Here.
Cupertino. Did we lose him? Cupertino. I see him. Gilroy.
Here.
Los Altos.
Here.
Los Altos Hills.
Here.
Los Gatos.
Here.
Milpitas.
Here.
Montessorino. Morgan Hill.
Present.
Mountain View.
Here.
Palo Alto.
Here.
San Jose.
Here.
Santa Clara.
Here.
Saratoga.
Here.
And Manny, are you still here too? He's on mute. Okay. Sunnyvale.
Here.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
still here, Andy, but I'm being silent.
Okay.
But I couldn't hear it, so I'm here.
We have a quorum. We saw you walk in,
Okay.
Stephen.
Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. Were there any comments on the consent agenda or questions? Please raise your hand if so. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Jackie.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Mayor Margaret Abacoga with a second by Vice Mayor Chappie Jones. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, Campbell,
Aye.
Cupertino,
Aye.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Los Altos. Where's Jan? Is she-
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Los Altos Hills,
Aye.
Los Gatos,
Aye.
Milpitas,
Aye.
Montessorino, Morgan Hill,
Aye.
Mountain View,
Aye.
Palo Alto,
Aye.
San Jose,
Aye.
Santa Clara. We lose Kathy. Okay,
Oh, sorry. Aye.
okay. Thanks, Kathy. Saratoga
Aye.
and Sunnyvale.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes unanimously, 14 with one absent.
Andy, I have a correction.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Do you
not
want-
the vice mayor. It lists me as the vice mayor. I'm actually the mayor.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, and I do know that.
You should know that.
I will make that correction. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item, community invited presentations. So let's unmute the person from SIVA. And I just want to, I wanted to bring this forward. You know, SIVA has been assisting multiple of our communities, but I don't think everyone knows about the organization. And I think there might be an opportunity for all of us, all of our cities to partner here. So with that, Andy, can you go ahead and pull up the presentation?
I'm working on that.
Okay.
Oh, wrong one.
So, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Pranjali.
Yay, I can. I'm audible. Happy to know that. Hello everybody. While Andy is pulling up the presentation, my name is Pranjali Dani. I am a volunteer with Seva International here, and there are two more teammates with Seva who are on the call with me. Sandeep Khadkekar, who is our Vice President of Marketing and Fund Development for Seva International. This is a national organization. And we have also Guru Prasad, who is our Seva Bay Area chapter coordinator. Sandeep ji works for Apple, and Guru Prasad ji works for Intel. I should have done that in a sequence. Apologies for that. So Andy has pulled up the presentation. Is there a way we can unmute Sandeep ji and Guru Prasad also?
Already unmuted.
Awesome.
I'm already unmuted.
Okay. So,
So first,
the flow here is like this. Sandeep ji will be presenting the national updates, and then Guru Prasad ji. Larry, is that okay? Anything you want to add, Andy?
No, I think that's good. Go right ahead in the presentation.
Perfect. Sandeep ji, all
sure.
yours.
And I'm happy to share my camera if you want to give that ability.
That's fine. I don't think you're a panelist, so it's removed.
Okay.
So that's fine.
No
Sorry.
problems. First, yeah, you can make it full screen in the presentation mode, but otherwise it's fine. So
Okay.
first of all, thank you so much, Cities of Santa Clara. It's good to see we getting an opportunity to talk about Seva International in front of all elite members of our cities in Bay Area. I'm Sandeep. I'm resident of Bay Area for last 20 plus years. And Guru Prasad is also resident of Contra Costa County for last 25 plus years. Seva International is a Hindu faith-based humanitarian service organization registered in USA. Our motto is service above self. That's our philosophy. We serve humanity in distress, irrespective of caste, creed, gender, religion, any biases. We are a top-rated charity. As per Charity Navigator, we are a charity with perfect 100 score, which is given for transparency, accountability, and we are listed as a top 10 charities in Charity Navigator with private contributions. Last year, we raised $7.5 million. And Seva International is an international charity. We are active in 22 countries outside of USA. The work that I'm presenting right now is COVID-related efforts for USA only. Next slide. Disaster management is one of our core forte. We are always on the forefront in times of disasters, and COVID was no different. Seva has taken up the mantle. We have a 6-pronged approach from Seva. First one is non-medical helpline. We have 10 helplines, which are non-medical helplines where people can ask questions about their visa-related issues, immigration, travel, any other emergency situations, and such advices. Medical supplies, wherein we are giving personal protective equipments to healthcare providers, law enforcement agencies, and
Did we lose you?
no, I think
Oh,
somebody
there
had
he's
muted
back.
me. Okay. So food and groceries, we have been distributing food through various our chapters to underserved community and those who are in need. Case management is primarily for those who individuals and families who need long-term assistance in cases of hospitalization, emotional wellness. International students is the next track, which is a population which is badly impacted by this. Some of them have lost their jobs and they were doing some temporary work. Some of them are out of their OPT period, which is a special visa status, and senior citizens is our last track, wherein all of us know they're more vulnerable and more prone for even getting COVID. Next slide. This is just Seva International Seva in numbers for COVID pandemic in USA. These numbers have changed. We have raised over $1 million now in USA. And interestingly, we have already spent over $1 million in US to fight this pandemic. Out of that, 625,000 plus KN95, N95, surgical masks, such personal protective equipments we have given to various facilities. We are serving 63,000 plus hot meals and food kits per week. So far, we have served over 45,000 families. We have also put together a team of 200 plus physicians and attorneys to help through these 10 non-medical helplines that we have launched. We have distributed food also through food pantries and given money for those. We are also a volunteer-driven organization. We are able to run our charity with under 5% overhead, and that's only possible because of our dedicated volunteers across 43 chapters in USA. We have 3,000 plus volunteers who are serving on the ground through 25 plus major cities in US. Next slide. We have Neighborhood Seva, wherein we are encouraging all our chapters to serve the local community through boots on ground. We have also launched a plasma donation registry, wherein all of us know that convalescent plasma is the last therapy, last option. And we have a separate website. We have 75+ donors who have registered. We have actually been able to make an impact to at least 4 lives, wherein we were able to match the plasma donation, and 2 of them actually came out of a ventilator. So it's a great inspiring thing. One story was covered by ABC News, how we helped in getting the plasma matched. Community education, especially in the initial days and even now, was a big need. We have conducted over 90 webinars for community education, which were viewed by 100,000+ people. We have also launched a unique mission mask making, stitching masks at home. And 1,000+ volunteers are stitching such masks, and we have distributed 80,000+ such masks. International students and stranded passengers, we have helped over 300. There was a group of sick passengers, 14 of them. They were traveling, they got stuck here because the airlines got closed, and we provided them accommodation. I'm just sharing one story. And we put them in a motel. Suddenly somebody developed a loud cough, and the person was not ready to take care of them because he was losing his business. Other passengers, he was not positive for COVID though. So we made their arrangements elsewhere. This is just one of the stories. 300+ such students have very unique stories, very touching stories, wherein we have been able to make a big difference. Next slide. This is just information about various aspects of personal protective equipments that we have helped in serving our neighborhoods. Next slide. I'll request Guru Prasad to cover the other aspects for Bay Area chapter specific. What I talked about is national. Guru Prasad. Previous slide, Guru Prasad. You may be on mute, Guru Prasad.
Yeah, you should be able to unmute yourself, ideally.
Oh, which,
And I'm trying to find out, Andy.
okay.
Just a second. No, wrong one.
You can
Guru?
unmute
Okay.
yourself
Guru?
as well.
I can. Yeah, I unmuted myself.
Go
Please
ahead.
go to the
Okay.
next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's good enough. Thank you. So I'm representing the Seva Bay Area chapter. This is one of the big chapters out of the 43 chapters that so Sandeep ji talked about. So we are, as we talked about, we are completely a volunteer-based organization. We have 1,000+ volunteers involved in senior citizens, youth, adults, family members, all coming forward and helping us out in several of the situations. And we do have a local helpline here, which is operated by our volunteers. What it means is anybody who needs help, whether it's a medication, food, or any kind of information, they can call this, helpline, and we are able to connect with the information. A lot of the people are calling from immigration help. We're able to, even Indian consulate, and those consulates are sending people to us. So we're helping in that. So we are able to help more than 200+ people on a regular basis on this helpline. It's very useful for a lot of people. And again, we have been able to support hot meals and groceries for more than 6,000 families in the last 2-3 months, and 60,000+ masks distributed. This includes, the face and the homemade mask, and also the mask that we bought and sent it. So some of them are for medical. A lot of these medical facilities needed. Like places like Rota Care, like free clinics, they needed the mask, so we are able to help them as well. And some of our volunteers did build face shields by themselves with the 3D printers. Kids in the homes, they built face shields, and we are able to support more than 2,000+ face shields locally here. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as a continuation of what we do, so in the last 2-3 months is most of the, not only that we help individuals through a helpline, we're also able to help several, organizations like 80+ institutions, organizations. We are not listed all of them, mainly hospitals and first responders, the police department, and education facilities, and even many senior shelters and senior centers as well. We're able to go and help them with food, masks, and even able to help with the other things that they needed. And I listed some of the, in the 8 cities and counties. I've listed some of them: city of Oakland, Cupertino, you name it, and this is going on, is increasing. So this just to give a few of what we have done in the last 1 or 2 months with the local helping locally here. Next slide, please. And this will continue. We would like to continue what we are doing. And again, this shows about the just like Sandeep talked about the national level. This is more of a local level. 700 plus masks. All the numbers speak to themselves. Another important thing I want to bring up is this is how we get our youth involved. So many times people like of my age, it is very natural for us to go and help people. But how do I have my son or daughter who is in the teenager to come and help? So SEWA has been in the forefront of getting our youth involved. So this is a great program that we have been able to connect with our youth, and we do special programs with them. And they came forward, have giving a helping hand during the COVID. You see all those kids, high school kids doing that. So they have done, 700 plus masks by themselves, and school kids, they go to good schools, and but there are a lot of underprivileged kids that don't have the school supplies. They made a kits by their own money, and they're able to support it. And then again, they donated money and made hot meals, and also we are doing free tutoring. And these kids are also, able to do free tutoring to different families which they cannot afford. And they did fundraise as well. $10,000 plus have been raised so far for COVID-19. Next slide. Next slide, please. So in addition to COVID-19, I also want to share what are the youth, how do we get the youth involved through the year? We run after school program called Aspire for the underprivileged in Ravenswood City School District in East Palo Alto. We've been running it for the past 2 years, and we are expanding it to other cities as well. And our kids do run bike-a-thon fundraisers and do the special aid. They do have a special classes for special aid kids, and we do run summer youth programs. And also the kids also run their own SEWA clubs. High school students, they can just start their own clubs. So many of our youth, we call the leadership program. Those kids already do, their own school clubs where they get more and more kids involved to come and forward and help. So these are some examples of where you see on the right-hand side, they are building mobile home. The kids go to Oroville where the camper is. They go and do their own, build a mobile home for themselves that we are donating to, people who lost their homes. Next slide, please.
5 or 5:30.
Yeah. So this is we have this just to summarize what we're talking about. Continuation. We're doing the helpline, and we continue to the food donation drive and the PPE donations, and high schoolers are engaged, and continue to do fundraiser drives wherever we can. And again on June 19th, next Saturday, we have a food and hygiene kit donation. We are planning for 1,000 plus people in San Jose area. This is a great event. Just hopefully we're able to help more people locally in the San Jose and around the area, underprivileged. Next slide, please. That should be my last slide. So just want to bring our asks here. We would like to request you, the city council members here, if there are any partnership opportunities with any cities that we can work together, SEWA coming forward and working with your team or any of your other organizations that you can connect with, it will be really helpful so that we can serve more people. Together we serve better. That's our motto. And we would like to join any long-term recovery group. Many times we just operate in the relief mode. SEWA is focused on rehabilitate and in the longer term. So if there is any long-term recovery group that there is interested in, then we want to connect with them as well. And the last but not the least, if there are any grant opportunities, we still need more funding. If there are grant opportunities out there serving people in our community, please connect us with and give us opportunities for the grant. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, we can take them now.
Okay, thank you, Sandeep and Guru, and of course, Pranjali. So I think if any member has questions, just raise your hand. But from an organizational standpoint, it would be good if you gave us send it to Andy, the main contacts, and you gave us a summary of support, and I think, you know, a lot of our cities have different support. I know that you've helped our city, you've helped Mountain View, you've helped a few other cities, and that's how I got involved with your organization. But definitely list out kind of the main contacts and give those to Andy, and we can, and all the different cities that need assistance. And I think we all need assistance, whether or not it's our school districts or the cities themselves. You've been helping out, and I really appreciate that. So are there any questions for the presenters? Okay. So thank you. Thank you for
so much. Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. Email ID is bayarea@sevausa.org, and it's SEWAUSA.org. And
Okay,
once again, thank you so much.
And I have one question. 1 second.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I can't see who the question's from.
Carmen.
Oh, go right ahead, Carmen. Sorry.
Sorry for taking my picture up. So can you give me the contact of that? I mean, this is to the organization. Is this to help? Can you help also in rent relief? We have a rent relief program in our city for a lot of folks that have been impacted by the COVID, not being able to work. Does your organization help with that?
Yes, if you can send the details. I did not understand. What did you say? Revoli?
Oh,
It's rent,
yeah.
rent relief.
We have a
Rent relief. Okay.
rent. You know how a lot of people are renters and they can't afford to pay their rent. Our city has implemented a rent relief program, and we have a nonprofit that is helping to navigate that. Do you help by giving out grants to those sort of programs to help folks in that area, or no?
So right now we only have one grant, which is to distribute those through destination homes, and that does not cover rent or leave, but it is for any workers who lost their jobs and they fall in that criteria. But rent or leave, we do not have any grant right now, but we are working to apply for one grant. And if we have some grants, we would be happy to distribute further. In extreme cases, we have helped a few, but that's not we have not taken it up as a big initiative or we don't have any funds allocated to support rent or leave. We have supported like 5 cases in Bay Area. Those are on really extreme case basis.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Larry. Thank you, Larry, so much, and Andy, for giving us the opportunity again. And as far as the contact details and email address goes, I will coordinate that and I'll send that out to Andy and rest of the team.
Fantastic. Thanks, Pranjali.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is committee and standing reports. First up is the Transportation Committee. Vice Mayor Ivakoga.
Thank you. So we met, I can't remember when, but we are working on a couple of presentations. The first one, I believe we're planning for August, is a presentation by Santa Clara University, I believe, economics professor Bill Sundstrom. Councilmember Rod Sinks from Cupertino has been in conversation with him, and he has a presentation about alternative transportation funding options. So we are hoping to be able to have him present to our group in our August meeting. So that's one. And then the other one is the commute-free work. We talked about telecommuting, the policy options for that. And it, some of you, I know many of us are in the call on Saturdays with Supervisor Chavez, who has spearheaded this effort through a task force with many agencies involved, including the Bay Area Air Quality Management District that she and I and Rod are on, and Liz, and MTC. And we actually had a presentation on Saturday from the SFMTA director, Jeff Tumlin, about congestion pricing and other transportation demand management options. So they're working, we've been working on a a resolution that we'd like to, once it's finalized, probably bring back to the cities for all of you to review and consider adopting and having your cities adopt it, as well as a pledge they're working on for large companies to pledge to include telecommuting as one of their options moving forward, even after shelter in place. So as soon as that is finalized, we will bring it back to the Cities Association. And that's it for now. Thank you. Questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to the LAC committee update. Vice Mayor Fligor.
Thanks, Chair Klein. We just have 4 items and I'll try to go through them as fast as possible. The first one is SB 1431, which is a bill that would allow landlords to request a property tax reassessment based on the financial impacts of COVID. The main concern of the committee members is that it would be retroactive, and so that it would go back to the January 2020 assessments and would require local governments and school districts to essentially issue tax rebates. And so the committee voted to recommend writing a letter opposing SB 1431. Would you like to take each bill, or do you want me to cover all 4 before we make a motion?
I think just go ahead and cover all 4.
Okay. The other bill we discussed was SB 1120, and the vote by the committee is also to write a letter opposing 1120. And this bill proposes to streamline the process to create duplexes or subdivide lots in residential zoned areas, and also the possibility of adding ADUs in addition to those duplexes. I would like to note that Mayor Abekoga had mentioned that Senator Jerry Hill is a co-sponsor of that bill, so maybe that's something we want to consider. Having said that, the committee still voted to send a letter opposing SB 1120.
Okay.
The next bill is SB 795 by Senator Bell, and the vote by the committee is actually to support this bill. And you should be familiar with it. It's an amendment to SB 5. It's $10 billion over 5 years for existing state housing programs that are running out of money, essentially. And then the last bill that we discussed and the committee took a vote on was SB 902, which is the Wiener bill, and the vote was to oppose this bill. This bill allows high density multi-unit housing in residential zoned areas. It would also limit or eliminate the CEQA process for projects, housing projects that consist of 10 or more units. So those were the 4 bills that we discussed to move, well, 4 items we discussed and to move forward to the full board.
Okay. Or are there any questions of Nisa? And most of you either saw since we started late, they saw that if they weren't part of the previous meeting, they at least saw the deliberations from that committee. So we can either take, I would, unless there's opposition, we can take this as a single motion. Does anyone have a motion?
I'll move it forward.
Thank you, Liz. Is there a second?
I'll second. Mary Lynn.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. Let's go ahead and do a vote.
Hello, Andy.
That's funny, and it wasn't
No,
my dog.
That's Buddy.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Niss and a second by Vice Mayor Mary Lynn Bernald to oppose SB 1431, oppose 902, oppose 1120, and support SB 795. Campbell.
Aye.
Cupertino.
Aye.
Gilroy.
Yes.
Los Altos.
Yes.
Los Altos Hills.
Aye.
Los Gatos.
Yes.
Milpitas.
Yes.
Montessorino. Morgan Hill.
Aye.
Mountain View.
Aye.
Palo Alto.
Aye.
San Jose.
Yes on SB 795 and abstain from the other ones.
Making my life difficult,
I
Chappie.
try, Andy.
Santa Clara,
Aye.
Saratoga,
Aye.
Sunnyvale.
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes unanimous on 795, and on the other three, it is 14 to with one abstention on the others. So the
Okay.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. And next up is a discussion on the ABAG General Assembly recap, which several of us were attending today. Who wishes to speak on this? I can give a summary. Let's see. Okay, I'll go ahead and give a quick summary. I think so. The big thing today was the biggest Zoom meeting that I've been a part of, at least so for now, was over 100 people on the Zoom meeting, and it was fairly standard from an update, and the biggest thing was the budget and an increase to the dues. So the county has been covering a certain amount of the fees during the transition of merging ABAG staff into MTC. They covered that for the first 2 years, and this year, from an increased standpoint, that was coming back to the cities as well as the county, and that from a city standpoint meant that there was an increase of approximately 20% to our yearly dues. And that had a lot of dissension from a county's, from the city's standpoint, mainly because, at least how I saw it, the MTC ABAG executive board hadn't looked at as much cost cutting issues as they might have. I think, ultimately they made to a certain degree a resolution that they will go back and look at that and try to see if they can refund the dues. The budget ultimately passed 58 to 19 or 59 to 18, something of that nature. Thank you.
Excuse me.
With an abstention. No, I appreciate that. I think, it's like, obviously the cities don't want to see the increase. At the end of the day, it wasn't a large increase, but it is the optics in my mind. It's also, we're all doing very hard decisions, making hard decisions as far as either, freezing positions, laying off staff, postponing projects, reducing services. And it seemed like MTC ABAG was kind of just going ahead with their normal process. And I understand that they're required to do certain things. That being said, cutting travel budgets, cutting, there's things that they could do internally or postpone the actual outreach of certain dates that pushes it conceivably out of fiscal year 2020, 2021 into 2022, and that immediately frees up a certain amount of money. So from my standpoint, there's a lot of opposition. A lot of people spoke against. The budget passed. The other thing that passed was the approval or speeding up the process of taking money from other sources and kind of speeding up that process if they see grants or things of that nature. But it was, it was approved. That being said, I think there was more dissension this year than I've ever seen before from the cities. So that's my quick summary. Let's see who else wants to speak. First up is Mayor Scharf.
Okay, unmute. So thank you, Larry. I have to say, Larry convinced me to change my vote from no to yes. I agreed the optics were terrible, but the amount was not excessive in terms of absolute dollars. I do think that MTC has this attitude that they don't need to cut anything. They can do business as usual while the cities are all suffering with layoffs and cutting services, cutting capital projects, cutting police officers in some situations. So I reluctantly voted yes. I'm almost regretting my vote, but I think the promise to go back and look at the dues and do refunds was kind of a hollow promise. They made a big deal about trying to let cities pay their fees, like stretch them out, which I think, was not ever the issue, because the absolute dollars is very small. But I thought they made too big of a deal of, oh, we can let people have a payment plan, which nobody had actually asked for a payment plan. I didn't really understand. There was some opposition to the being able to take that money. Apparently it related to a concern that private companies would be donating money in an effort to gain some kind of favor with cities or MTC. Can you explain that more, Larry? I'm done.
Okay. I'll probably I can't give the best explanation from that, but from my standpoint, it's accepting the money. They would still have to, basically broadcast that they receive money from whatever entity they're getting money from. So I don't see that. I didn't see that as such a horrible thing. It's like, oh, if Google wants to give them $500,000 to do a study, it's the same thing as most of our cities, that if a developer wants to fund, we're happy to take the money. At the end of the day, the money comes into the city and then we manage the actual study with our staff. So I don't think I didn't see that as a critical thing. But from our standpoint, if the other thing I forgot to mention, if we had actually denied the budget, we would have had to meet again within the next 3 weeks before July 1st to actually approve that, to me, which wouldn't have seen, to try to turn around a new report and get everyone together again in 3 weeks was almost an impossibility. So, okay, next up is Councilmember Niss.
Who certainly took a very different take on this. I found this is the most tone-deaf group I have run into in a long time. It wasn't about the money. It's going to cost us another $3,000 or something. It was that the message back to us was that they didn't have any choice. They had to do what they were going to do. And I thought, I couldn't imagine this. We have a city that's cutting 40 million of our budget, almost 20%. And had they said, this will be the year that we don't raise the dues, I probably could have voted for it. But I was extraordinarily disappointed. But thank you again, Larry, for dinging me and make sure I got to the meeting so that I could vote no. But it was very disappointing.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Vice Mayor Bernard.
Larry.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out how, without reevaluating, they could offer hardship and pay overtime and pay their bills. I ended up voting no because I wanted to hold their feet to the fire. And I had wanted it in the motion. It didn't happen. But they said they will reevaluate in October by the Finance Committee and staff. I don't see, Larry, how they could have reviewed in 3 weeks and come up with any other answer. They kept saying over and over, staff was tied to the grants were tied to staff. There was just no wiggle room. But as you said, no looking to cutting travel time or training or whatever they've been doing. And can anyone explain what the deal is with the scones? Are we paying for scones? That was early on in the conversation, how good they were and how they were missing them. So I need an answer. That's all.
Yeah, I for Margaret and I to actually go up to last year's discussions at the MTC offices, I was actually surprised about the food and everything else. But it's an evening meeting, and I can understand a little bit. But yeah, that is kind of a standard sort of thing, that if you have an evening meeting, we'll bring in food. But yes, well, it is what it is. Next up is Vice Mayor Gibbons.
Just offer one, 3 years ago when ABEG and MTC merged, there was an expectation of the cost involved. When they actually implemented the change, ABEG and MTC staff had different retirement programs and different salary schedules. It turned out when they actually did the budget that there was a $2 million shortfall. So that's when the counties agreed to take up the slack. The cities ultimately knew 2 years ago that there was going to be a reckoning day. And it's important to notice that ABAG only meets every 2 months. We're meeting more now, but we traditionally meet every 2 months. And we have to pass the budget before it goes on to the assembly. That was done, I believe, in February, before the whole COVID thing even started. It was challenged, but the world was different, different then, and there was a level of expectation. So that's a little bit of backstory. The motion on approving acceptance of money was a bit of a surprise to me on the agenda because it has to do with BAFA. And this is part of my report. There's a report that will get added to your meeting notes today. BAFA is the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority. And that was the one that would have to be set up if the ballot measure we mentioned last month would go forward. The ballot measure did not meet the test of polling. So the question is what to do about BAFA. And there's a big discrepancy about what BAFA was intended to do and how it can be used. And there is no money at MTC or ABAG to fund BAFA in any fashion. And there's a big push by the nonprofits and housing groups to stand up BAFA so they can collect money, as they now legally can do, to fund their staff. Without money, BAFA doesn't exist and nothing can happen in the area of housing. So I put in a whole bunch of material that anyone who wants to look at it will get a sense of what it's about. It's complicated, and next Thursday, the 18th, we're going to be voting about whether BAFA should go forward or not. They're going to use the support of this funding as the basis for moving BAFA forward. I would only offer that BAFA sets up a whole new bureaucracy, and ABAG executive boards feel very strongly that there's already a functioning ABAG board to make the decisions, and ABAG is the lead agency. We do not, there was general discussion that we didn't think it was appropriate to set up BAFA because it was a financing agency, not a planning and housing agency. So that's the big deal on the 18th.
The information that Liz just mentioned, if you go to the Cities Association website and you go to the meetings page for this meeting, I've included the information that she was just talking about right here. There are 2 presentations and it's right above where the agenda would be.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Next up is Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Chair Klein. So I was also on the call today representing Santa Clara, and we took the position of no, and it was very interesting listening to the whole conversation, everybody's positions, but in the end, I mean, Santa Clara could have absorbed the $5,000. I think the difference between what we're paying, what we're paying now in dues versus the increase, the 2.2 increase supposedly, is a little over $5,000. And I was texting back and forth with our city manager and some staff members, and but it was just the principle. And you know, as I said, you know, today that you know, they could have taken the position to just freeze the budget. I mean, they, you know, as Liz just mentioned, you know, the last meeting was back in February. They've been working on this. They had a heads up over the last 3-4 months, you know, where we're going, you know, as a community. So anyway, they could have taken into consideration, you know, the fact of, you know, what this is imposed on cities, and other agencies have, you know, taken the position that, you know, they're not going to increase fees. We haven't increased fees. I mean, everybody is doing what they can to help each other right now. And this certainly didn't seem like a way to be able to help cities moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in October, but Santa Clara definitely took the position of no today. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Larry, you're muted.
Yes, I know. I just saw. So thank you very much. Anyone else who wishes to speak on this? And we have a few staff in the public if they ever want to speak. Definitely ping you're elected. It's probably the best thing. Okay. Nothing else on the ABAG issue. And just to let everybody know, I did add it to my list to talk to Therese McMillan, just to reiterate what we basically talked about from a city standpoint, and on a one-on-one basis, talk about the issues that we just raised. That all of our cities are doing whatever we can to make sure that our residents have as much services, our staff retain as much staff as possible, but it didn't look like MTC ABAG was trying to do the same thing. And I understand from a timing standpoint, as Liz said, a lot of these decisions were made at the beginning of March. That being said, here we are at the end of June or halfway through June, and they could have done, I'll say, a little bit more tweaks to the budget, because our staff did like 3 different budgets since the beginning of the year. So anyway, that's all we have on this item. I see no other comments. So we will now move on to pandemic contact tracing testing and other items, updates regarding the city operations. So this is, I wanted to kind of open it up. Again, I think the last few meetings, this has been very useful as far as how things continue to change from a testing, tracing, and county health order standpoint. All of our cities are being affected directly with what the county health has been doing. Things opened up in a big way last Friday, and all of our cities are trying to get more outdoor seating, trying to deal with new items that are opened up, doing the appropriate advocacy with the county supervisors for testing and tracing. So I'll leave it up to anyone else. I've talked a lot, and I've talked previously on this matter, but let's go ahead, and if you have comments, questions, definitely raise your hand. First up is Mayor Scharf.
Okay, we issued a statement today in response to what the county has said regarding testing. We will have mobile testing in one of our parks. And I think the key thing is that for a while, people thought they couldn't get tested because there were all these requirements of a doctor's referral, or you had to have symptoms, or you had to have been in contact with someone that had it. And now the county's totally changed it, and they're encouraging everybody to get tested, even if you're asymptomatic. And I think their message may not be getting out too well. So I think each city may want to make a statement encouraging their residents, asymptomatic or not, to go get free testing. I got tested about a week and a half ago down at the fairgrounds. It's very painless. They actually give you the swab to stick up your nose yourself, and they just keep saying further, 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 but it doesn't really hurt. It was fine, and I got the results in a few days, and fortunately it showed negative. Hopefully it was accurate. So, I think this is the time to encourage all our residents to get tested. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And in a discussion with the county supervisors last weekend, we're trying to get a clarification on what the recommendations are for especially restaurant workers and service workers, that how often should they be tested. And the county didn't commit, but they're basically suggesting every 2 weeks, and hopefully that will, they'll clarify that sometime in the next week, hopefully. Next up is Councilmember Liz Niss.
So in conjunction, I am on, right?
Yes, you are.
So in conjunction with the county, our city, working with the city manager, has put together 4 days of testing next week in Palo Alto, which we are delighted about, and it will be at City Hall. So there's ample parking. We have 500 tests a day that we can do, and I hope we do that. And this is particularly significant because we're just opening up our streets, or vice versa, we're just closing our streets. Discovered that California Avenue actually opened today, which none of us knew was going to happen. But given last weekend, if any of you did any of the protests, we are going to tell people, in particular, if you were at a protest last weekend, we had one that started at Palo Alto City Hall with about 3,000 people. There is no better time to get a test than after you have been at a protest with a group of people for an hour or 2 or 3. It went on for quite a while. So for anyone you know who may need a test for some reason, that will be going on next week. Other than that, I think I've become a broken record on just get a test. Just get a test. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Next up is Mayor Abacoga.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Councilmember Niss, because she was the charge in trying to get more testing up in North County. And as a result, we had I guess it's been 2 weeks now, but we had the mobile van come in for a pop-up Memorial Day week that week. And we had 2 days and had 1,000 people come out. I know Mayor Klein was there. So it's hugely successful. We are starting next week, will be a soft opening for a site that Planned Parenthood is going to be staffing at Shoreline, out in our Shoreline area. And it's Monday through Thursday, not in the morning for 3 hours, in the afternoon for 3 hours. So it's going to be there permanently, is my understanding. So yes, we have a lot more opportunity in North County. So thank you, Liz.
Is it going to be a drive-through? Ours is going to be a walk-up.
I'm not sure. I don't know all the details. We're still learning them, but I'm thinking it's like what we had, 2 weeks ago.
Was Mountain View walk-up?
It was, yes.
Yeah. And you did your own swabbing?
No, so that we still had it done. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that now you can do it yourself. It doesn't hurt. It's just a weird, funky feeling. And then we got results within a day, actually. But the challenge is they call you and they don't leave a number. So if you don't answer the phone, you don't find out until you answer the phone. So
yeah,
we've mentioned that.
Yes. Thanks. That's good to hear.
Thank you. And next up is Mayor Wu.
Yes, I just want to say that we are going to have a mobile testing van at the Los Altos Town Hall, and that is a walk-up from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow. My understanding is not only just for the town resident, any resident within Santa Clara County can come for a test. And we've been making this spreading the word as the request from the county supervisor that we post Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, Instagram, as well as the town's newsletter and the email newsletter as well. So we send a word out. We'll welcome anyone come over and for testing if you wish. That's
Fantastic.
tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Thank you. At Town
Great.
Hall.
Great. Any other comments? I'll just do a quick summary. So we're dealing with the county and trying to get several locations here for the mobile van, actually. And I wanted to bring up tracing again, just to remind people from a city standpoint. We approved 7 people that will be doing tracing for the next 3 months, and conceivably a little bit more, depending upon whether or not there's a spike. And so, reaching out to your community, either is there some staff that can do part-time work or full-time work for a few months, and then whether or not any of your CERT volunteers or other retired community or other portions of your community have bandwidth and interest in applying for tracing at a county level. I think when we see this next spike, doing those tracing of who's been exposed to COVID-19 will be very important. And then just lastly, we closed down our Murphy Avenue Monday morning, and the feedback from the residents has been fantastic. And when we say it's only going to, when we say it's only going to be for 6 months, they're like, it needs to be forever. And so I think that will be the big question from the businesses. So we'll see how that goes. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to discussion regarding recent community actions and request for a social justice reform. So I know that Chappie had some questions, and I think all of our cities have had a lot of rallies, marches over the last 2 weeks. Most of them very peaceful. Last week there was more than 2,000 people at Sunnyvale City Hall that marched from downtown to our City Hall. And it was peaceful. It was actually really good to hear the stories. It's the biggest march in Sunnyvale's history that anyone can remember. And, it was actually good that the police were there. They were, helpful. They helped our residents get across busy Matilda Avenue. But then, of course, it was making sure that people felt safe. Everyone was wearing masks. What Liz said earlier, as far as people not safe socially distancing, there wasn't enough. They weren't 6 feet apart. That being said, everyone I saw wore a mask. So at least that was prepared. People were prepared. And I actually upgraded a few people from disposable masks to reusable face coverings, as the county always likes to say. So I think it's important. Go ahead.
Larry, would you just mention, I was thrilled to hear your public safety.
Oh, yes.
Yes, interviewed on NPR. So you might
Yes.
say something about that. That was wonderful.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Sunnyvale is fairly unique that we have a public safety. We don't have a police department. We don't have a fire department. Every one of our public safety officers is trained in fire, police, and EMS. And so ultimately this decision was made by a city manager in 1950. And to me, it's very good, especially when we start talking about kind of the social injustice and defunding the police right now. We have fewer officers. If you look at combined numbers of fire and police, fewer officers on duty at any given time, a smaller police force. We pay them more because they're trained more, and because they have to go through a lot more training. But it also kind of merges the concept of everybody loves a fireman, but there's a lot of resentment against the police. And if you're constantly switching between those two disciplines, I'd say even from an officer standpoint, your perspective of the world changes just a little bit. And so our police chief was interviewed on Marketplace yesterday, and I'll put that link into the chat there so you can read the transcript, or you can listen to it at some point. But I thought it was really good that, that we got some national press. We're the biggest city, and the next biggest city, I think, is Kalamazoo, Michigan, who I met the mayor of Kalamazoo at the mayor's conference last year. And I was very impressed that they actually made that change in the 1980s. And they went to both unions and said, this will ultimately save us money in the long term. You'll both get, the officers will get paid more. You have to get more training, but ultimately, as people retire, we're going to reduce the force, or reduce the number of officers that we have. And so it saves the city's money in the long term, and gets rid of some of the, I'll say, issues that we've heard from residents. Not that we don't have any issues, and definitely there were stories that during the march and during the rally that we heard about, but it does change the dialogue just a little bit. So thanks for bringing that up, Liz. I've been hearing a lot from residents that didn't, most people even in our own city don't know that the public safety is merging fire and police. So thank you. Next up is Mayor Abacoga.
Oh, did Chappie want to speak first?
Chappie, it's up to you, Chappie.
Thank you, Larry. everybody's keenly aware of what we're going through right now. There's a tipping point. Something happened. But I'm old enough to remember the 60s. I was just a kid, but I lived through it. And I remember the protests. I remember a feeling of anger, despair, and then also hope that things would get better. So fast forward, 50 plus years, and it's like deja vu all over again. Particularly young people have had an awakening, and they're out in the streets. And for us older generation, we're seeing this unfold in front of our eyes and wondering what can we do to make a difference. And one of the challenges that I want to make to this group and this organization is just not let this be a moment in time where we protest, we rally, we make a donation to the NAACP, we give out platitudes, and then 5, 6, 10 years from now, we're back in the same situation. There's going to be another George Floyd. We have to have some uncomfortable conversations. We have to come to some realizations that if we want to make change, that it's going to impact our lives and some of our comforts and some of the things in positions that we've taken in the past, they're going to need to change. And so that's my challenge to this organization is let's not do the superficial things only. Let's do some things that are going to be meaningful and impactful. But that's not to diminish the symbolism and gestures. So I know several of the mayors have already signed on to the Obama My Brother's Keepers Alliance. I don't know, Larry, how many cities have signed up or are part of that, but we should definitely try to promote every city, every mayor in the county to sign up for the My Brother's Keeper Alliance. We also drafted a proclamation, a resolution proclaiming Black Lives Matter. And hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to read it. And what I want to do is, one, see if there's a interest and support in terms of this association issuing that resolution, and to get your feedback in terms of the content. So I want to open it up to the group to get your feedback.
Thank you. And Chappie, my heart goes out to you as we've talked a little bit about, I've talked to you and Sam about how things, what's happened in San Jose, and I really feel for you, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. From my standpoint, signing up for the mayor's pledge to me was symbolic, but it also committed to not just doing a knee-jerk reaction, but going through a process and hearing our residents. And I agree, hopefully it starts this dialogue and makes actual change that 10 years from now, it's not forgotten, but we're continuing that dialogue. So thank you. As far as comments, I'll go through, and if you have comments on this or just comments but we can come back to you later if you have comments on what's happening in your city. So first up, Mayor Abakoga.
Am I on? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So thank you, Chappie. I actually signed the Obama Foundation pledge, and we will be taking up, I think it's a similar resolution at our next meeting on the 23rd. And I also will be appointing a subcommittee, ad hoc subcommittee on race, equity, and inclusion. I don't know, and I wanted to, my question to all of you was, if you had a similar experience at your last council meeting. We met Tuesday night, and it went until 3:30 a.m. 3:30 a.m. because we had, quite a few folks calling in, and then there was a email writing campaign. I wanted to ask what you all do, but we allow, emails to come in, and after a certain time, we say we're going to read it into have the city clerk read it into the record. And so my daughters told me about it, that they had strategized so that they would send in the emails after 5. So we got 160 emails from 5 o'clock until 11:30 when we took the issue up. So that's why city clerk actually started reading, and then we were able to, our city attorney helped us to kind of consolidate, but that was a good 2 hours of reading. So I was wondering what all of you do. Were we looking at our policy there? Because, that just wasn't really helpful. So I wanted to ask, but I also wanted to see if you all had that experience. It was organized by the Democratic Socialists of America with some of our high school students, and we were getting updates. I think Fremont had the same group doing the same thing, and yeah, I was wondering if you all had that. But as in light of that, definitely there needs to be more conversation. And my hope is with our ad hoc committee, we can do that and have a series of conversations on race, equity, and inclusion. So that's our direction we're taking. But yeah, I'd love to hear if you all had the same situation and what you are thinking of doing with the public comment.
Thank you, Margaret. We didn't have that same problem. We definitely had people who spoke at the beginning of the meeting in public comment more so than normal. There is the issue that normally we reduce it to 3 minutes and then however many people speak. That being said, in the world of Zoom, do you give priority for people that are on the Zoom call that want to speak, or the people that emailed comments in for public comment for that same time? So we went for like 35, 40 minutes, not too bad. We didn't get the hundreds of people that wanted to speak. And if there's too many, normally we push public comment, we subdivide public comment into 2 sections, but definitely we had more people that wanted to speak on that than normal. Next up is Mayor Scharf. Oh, sorry, Mayor Pepper.
Thanks, Larry. Nice to see all of you here tonight. I just wanted to report on what was happening in Los Altos. We had a big march last Friday, and I don't know the count, but someone told me it was maybe 5,000 people marching, which is huge for our town. And it was very energizing, and it was really great to have everyone together and to see such unity in our community. Chappie, you said that it was kind of a deja vu from the 60s. It was a deja vu for me, although I was pretty little in the 60s. But you said there was a sense of hope then. I'm feeling not as much of a sense of hope now. And maybe it's because of, not seeing a lot of leadership at the national level, that there's a lot going on locally, but there isn't any calming influence going on that makes people feel like, yeah, things can get better. So we're doing it at the local level, and that's why we're all in local government. So, and I am signing on to Obama's mayor's pledge. And also Vice Mayor Flagler and I are going to form an ad hoc committee to work with our police department, members of our community, and other city staff to review the training policies and practices of our police force. And there are a number of people in the community who we feel might be able to really contribute to that. And we're hoping to get this on a fast track and get this done like within 6 months, and then make sure that our police are reflecting what our community wants. So
oh, I'm still going.
What? Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. Thank you, Jan. And Stephen, before you go, or before you start, Mariko has had technical difficulties and has had her hand up for a while now, and
yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. Go ahead, Mariko.
Oh, thank you. Just want to echo, and for all those that drafted this, thank you for providing the resolution. Our town, our mayor did sign the the pledge. What I'm looking to do, and this is where I'd love to hear from everyone, it's good to know about this task force, is what else can we do? And as Vice Mayor Chappie says, I don't want it just to be a symbolic statement that we sign and then, you know, a year later, we haven't really done anything. So that having a task force that looks at police policies, I think that's a great idea. One question I did want to ask, during our protests, so much came out about what is happening in our local schools. And so the question that has been raised over and over again is, as a town, what do you do? Like, are you working in partnership with your schools? And there's a lot of people within our institution that are saying that's a school problem. I strongly disagree. So I'm curious to know in your cities, if there's been any work or partnership with your school districts to see what as a community you can do to reinforce what's being taught and not taught in your school districts. So.
Okay. Stephen, and so as people go through comments, please, consider answering Mariko's question as far as school districts. Go ahead, Mayor Scharf.
Okay, great, thanks. I signed the Obama Pledge as well, and our city passed a resolution last week. On June 22nd, we are going to have a town hall with the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department, who provides our law enforcement, to look at the 8 Can't Wait and what the situation is with that with the sheriff's office. I expect we will get a good virtual crowd on that. I wish the defunding branding was a little different. Personally, I don't know about other cities. Our sheriff's department would love to get out of the business of mediating neighborhood disputes, doing mental health services, enforcing dog poop problems, homeless encampments, and get back to the actual law enforcement of catching real criminals. But for decades, the state and federal government have defunded these other programs. So now we've called on the police to kind of fill the gap to perform tasks that really should be performed by other entities better equipped to perform them. So I understand the whole defund narrative. And it makes sense when you know what it means, but I think it could be branded a little better. Last week, we had a protest in Cupertino last Saturday with about 900 people. I could not attend. I was driving to San Diego to pick up my son from college, but 3 of our council members did attend. It was very peaceful. The organizers asked the police not to be there, and the sheriff complied with that. Even though he would have been willing to attend and march with them. I don't know how many people watched John Oliver's video of the protests, and at the end, he let a Black woman speak about what was going on, and despite her obscenities, her message was very good. It was a lack of inclusion. She was saying, we don't own anything. And I was reading an article about how Black homeownership has gone way, way, way down in the United States over the years. And I think having people with a stake in things is so important. And if there's one thing we can do and encourage ABAG to do, it's to try to get the message out that, we really want people to be able to be part of the middle class, build middle class wealth, own something so they have a stake in the community. And I think police brutality gets all the attention, but it goes so far beyond that, why people feel excluded and left out. So hopefully we can do something positive in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up is Vice Mayor Bernald.
Thank you, Larry. Last weekend, a group of individuals organized a Black Lives Matter rally, and they approached me, and I felt that it was more natural to connect with our mayor. And so it was coordinated ultimately with our city, and it was done in our little quad and area. So it was limited and it was not a march. We had 1,400 to 1,500 people attend, most of them with masks. somewhat spread out with a variety of students and a rapper and a resident and drums and all kinds of things. It was truly inspiring. And probably what was the most inspiring was, as Mariko has said, the talks from the two young women who are in high school at Saratoga High, who talked about the, I'm going to call it bigotry in the school. It's not just against Blacks, it's against Asians within Asians, and that the language that they use among themselves is not monitored even by the teachers. So I think this is an important message to carry forward. Certainly these young women have been working within the school to try and do that. And there was even a letter that was read from a graduate student that said it has existed for a long time and needs to change. So I think, Mariko, your idea of having this conversation with the school, I think is essential. The inspiring thing of it all was it was so successful that the organizers have continued, and they're doing more outreach for more people to get involved on all different levels. We haven't had a meeting that drew attention yet for the Black Lives Matter. I think everything was moved towards the rally. And so this, the 17th, this coming Wednesday, we are going to have a Juneteenth proclamation. And we also are having a resolution that was being finalized today when I was in agenda setting. So I haven't seen it, and I don't know if it's based on the one that you have shown us, Chappie. With the rally, the sheriff had a very low profile, but the deputies were there. And there was, actually, it was actually in Cupertino at Henchett Park, where there was a changing of the guard. And that fortunately was very peaceful because it did involve the sheriffs. We have not done any of the any of the sign-ons because for us, there's been some discussion of it. It is county, not city run. So there should be conversations that we should be having with the county. And fortunately, last week, Joe, as many of us know, Joe Simidian, who runs our Thursday evening get-togethers for his district, did mention about the 3 items that he's pushing and the county is trying to do. So I think that's a good place for that. I am very optimistic that this will not end. It cannot end. I'm not going to point out anybody else, but I am old enough, and I did live in Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Virginia as a child. I have experienced desegregation, and I have experienced the lowest form of life of people who fought against that. And I know that this is not something that is easily overcome because it's actually inbred. My hope is that with our country being more mobile and more people moving around and support from our youth in so many places, that this message will get through and carry over through the generations because it has to.
Yep. Very good. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary Lynn. Next up is Councilmember Watanabe. Kathy?
Did I put her to sleep?
No, I'm here. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And yeah, no, Santa Clara had a pretty busy week. And aside from providing mutual aid along with San Jose and working on our borders, we put a curfew in place as a way to just work with San Jose. And it's amazing as an elected now how you hear people's reactions to curfews and their First Amendment rights being violated and all you were trying to do was just protect your citizens, protect your city because of, I'm sure maybe some of you saw as well, there were on social media, there were statements going around about how cities were going to be looted. And so quick action needed to be taken, and we did. But at the same time, once the curfew was released 2 days later, we took quick action. Well, first we had to ratify, the council had to ratify the emergency declaration that was put in place by the city manager. But at the same time, Mayor Gilmore took that opportunity to put together a really lovely statement about George Floyd and talk about, what has happened to him has impacted not just our community, but really the world, and how we all have to work together. And but in that short period of time, because that was Thursday, she had signed the mayor's pledge as well. And within another day, she and the chief of police, Chief Nikolai, put together a community video that has done very well in the community, just talking about what has happened, what the city plans to do, what the police department plans to do moving forward. And at our June 23rd council meeting, we will have a formal resolution presented along with a report from the police department talking about the initiatives that the police department is going to take on going forward. As a matter of fact, tonight, the chief had a virtual town hall meeting, which I missed, but at the same time, I understand it was very well attended. And going forward, the police department is going to be following up with creating a webpage in response to the mayor's pledge campaign, and include the principles, that people are requesting that police departments look at, and also, just reviewing policies. And we also received a ton of emails and letters, requesting police departments to start, reviewing their policies. I replied to over 200 myself, just to let people know that they were being heard. I think it's really important that people know that they're being heard right now. And so our staff has responded to over 1,000 that have come to the mayor and council, but in the ones that I've received individually, I have taken the time to respond to. Mariko, I will say that I have not heard of anything being talked about involving the schools, but I think that that's a wonderful idea to involve the schools and get them involved as we move forward as a community and talking about, because that's what we keep emphasizing, how we need to talk. And going along with the town hall tonight, it's an opportunity to start the dialogue. And because we can take these actions, but or do these things, but actions speak louder than words. And so we have to take action as community, as a state, as a country. So Santa Clara has taken this very seriously. And we look forward to seeing, how, as it evolves, and maybe learn from each other, cities around us, and what everybody else is doing and what we can incorporate into our plans. But the one good thing, I mean, if you can say that something good happened. A banner was displayed across the street from our police department yesterday morning. It just popped up out of nowhere, saying, "Thank you, Santa Clara Police Department. Santa Clara loves you." And it just touched everybody's heart, made the police department feel loved, and that they are appreciated. And so those simple gestures make a big world of difference. So I guess we're just all learning from each other right now, but we have plans and look forward to seeing where it all goes. So thank you very much for your time.
And thank you very much, Kathy. Next up is Councilmember Niss. Liz?
Mute. I have already mentioned the Sunnyvale safety, and tell me what you're actually called, safety?
Public safety.
Public safety.
Yep.
I admired that, especially when I was on the Board of Supervisors. And I remember thinking at the time, what a terrific way to go about it. And I remember one of the guys said, we just go into a phone booth and change our outfit. And, you know, the next thing you know, we're seen completely differently. And
Yeah.
you're so right. Everyone likes the firefighters. They feel a less affinity for the police. And when you mix them together, you get such a terrific outcome. So, and Margaret, you talked about, where are you there, Margaret? You talked about, I thought we went till 1:30, 1:45. That seemed late to me. So you beat us, but we did the same thing. We listened to everyone who wanted to talk to us for at least a couple of hours. And I think that was really important. It was cathartic in many ways. I think one of the things, and I was thinking to what Chappie said, so many of those who are involved with the protest were young, and I think came, I don't know from where, but I know that they did, there was a big group, they were organized, and you actually mentioned an organization, did you?
They're older, the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA.
Oh.
So they were live tweeting, and they had this whole strategy, and unfortunately they were not very positive in the way they were presenting.
Well, we had some of that as well, and that's difficult to deal with. But our mayor has signed the pledge. We did a resolution that was written, but is not dissimilar from what we're looking at tonight. And we too have formed a committee that is going to go forward and especially work throughout the summer. But if I could think of anything that I think would change in many ways for the long term, it would be to do what Sunnyvale does. And I'm just amazed that the rest of us haven't thought of that or duplicated it over time. I think we're used to the system we use, and it probably is difficult to segue into that other system except over a long period of time. But for a solution, that at least resonates with me. And we will be working in all the other aspects, including with our schools. So thank you, Larry, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Liz. So I'll bring up two more things that, as far as that model is concerned, it does, every time there's a downturn, cities reach out to us to say, oh, how do you save money with this? And so every time there's a downturn, that's when it normally comes out. This was the first time with like the racial unrest, which basically caused that. And the other thing is, everybody's heard of Mayor Fry from Minneapolis. I forwarded him the Marketplace article and said, here's an option forward. If you're going to defund your police, think about merging those two unions, because too often those unions also, I'll say, play against each other, especially in negotiations with the city. And so you're only dealing with a single public safety union, which is also better to a certain degree from a city standpoint.
That's an excellent comment.
Yes. Next up is Mayor Constantine. Hey, Rich.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
I do know that Lisa sent you some things, Larry, to add to it. I can't support those because they're not objective enough, in my opinion, because although the Black community needs a lot of help, so do other minority communities. So everybody else is not understanding what I'm talking about because it's just between an email that was just sent to you, Larry. I want to make a comment on what I've been hearing tonight. And I have to say, I'm disheartened. And the reason why I'm disheartened is because I've heard comments like, well, I hope something gets done and I hope this moves forward. If this body is not the body to move things forward, then I don't know which one is. I heard people say that they signed on to President Obama's pledge and they filed resolutions. And it's a great start. We're talking about a resolution tonight, but that's a piece of paper. And words without actions are nothing. And, it was brought up that, we're talking about George Floyd, but I want to think about all the other names that were before George Floyd, and they're going to be after George Floyd. The pledge that you sign with President Obama is only symbolic if you don't do anything about it. The president's pledge has some very specific steps that we can all take. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I only bring up these examples as something that we can all do. We had a town hall via Zoom, which were attended by over 120 of our residents. I wish there were more, specifically with the police chief to talk about what happened and what steps that our police department is doing and will do in the future. Just last night, just before this meeting, I received an email that our police department is now banning the carotid hold. There's a difference between carotid hold and choke hold. Carotid hold shuts off the circulation from the carotid, and it's a technique that is taught. I want to hear less about what you guys have done or heard and what you're going to do. This is a call for action that is long overdue. And I have to say, I'm really disappointed at what I'm hearing. I just can't understand when there's a worldwide protest. And Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Rodney King, 1991. That was Rodney King in 1991. And that was all the things that I'm talking about, all the people that we're talking about right now. The only reason why we know their names is because there's videotape. I apologize. You can obviously tell that I'm a little elevated right now, but this is something that's personal to me, but it should be personal to everybody. We all took an oath when we raised our hand when we were elected to these positions to defend the Constitution of the United States. And it's more than just resolutions and having meetings and writing emails telling people you hear what they're saying. You want people to hear what you're saying, then do something. That's how they hear what you're saying, by seeing your actions. People, we are leaders of this county. We have to do something. Please. I'm tired. I'm tired. I really am. And I try so hard not to buy into the talk on Twitter, because I want to yell just as loud as those people that are protesting. And I want this body to do more than sign a pledge and forget about it. Sorry for being so heavy.
Rich, that's very useful. And from my standpoint, I think all of us are going through, and I look at this discussion as a little bit of counseling across the board, because, this is, watching that video was heart-wrenching, was outraging. I totally agree. And it's what steps we go through going forward. definitely, and one of the things that I would like to get a poll on after this meeting is how many of us have our own police or public safety or utilize the sheriff. I don't think we have a good handle on that from our standpoint. So it would be good to get that information from all of our cities and then forward that out. I think it is, and exactly what you're saying, making change. So our public safety didn't allow chokeholds, but allowed the carotid hold. And we also earlier today, basically outlawed that from a public safety manual. And a lot of that is done at a state level. Most of our cities are follow what's basically proposed from a state standpoint. So I agree about the resolution and making sure that it's symbolic, but it's also what are we going to do in each of our cities. I appreciate your words. Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Resnikoff.
Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Rich. Your words are powerful and they mean a lot. I'd like to say that, well, first of all, our mayor has not signed the pledge. I'll be speaking with her tomorrow. I don't know the issues, but I think it's a good thing to move forward on. But I don't think it has to be just symbolic. I mean, I think it can be a first step. It educates and lends us maybe to the steps that we have to start taking. So I don't think it has to be symbolic and stay there. I hope not. And that's not the intent. So obviously actions speak louder than words. I would like to say that, as much as this is looking back again, Campbell had a number of days of very well-attended but peaceful protests, and our police were supportive I'll say in a low-key way, but a very supportive way. And it went a long way to developing even a better relationship with the people that were out there. And I think that's important because it goes to the next step. I think Mayor Scharf earlier said about a branding issue, if you will, on defunding. I think when we get away from the idea of eliminating and get away to the idea of reforming and coming up with other ideas that can enhance the relationships and the interactions that the PD has with all of the members of the public, that's a good thing. And I think their interaction with the protesters is helping those discussions. And I know I've spoken to our police chief, who's relatively new in the job, less than a year. He's been with our force many years. He is certainly wants to move forward and have those conversations with the community of how do we improve. Those are the goals, and they're not steps yet, but I think that that's the direction we're moving in. Just one quick thing, if I may, to Margaret's comment earlier about the meetings. We haven't had anything like you've expressed. We did have maybe about 30 emails read at our last meeting, and that wasn't too bad. I know that we had a special meeting this week on budgets, and we had basically a time cutoff point. You could certainly call in and speak. We're allowing live conversation now from the public. But if a comment wasn't received or email wasn't received by a certain time, it wasn't read publicly. It was put in as a public desk item. We got copies, and it's there for the public. So that might be, there's probably some legalities in that, but that might be a way to manage it, because otherwise we would be in the same boat. It isn't a bad thing to read them, but it's not the most efficient way to get that message out either. So I just wanted to bring that up. We're gonna, I hope, move forward as a council and make serious steps, starting with things that may be symbolic but are helping us to understand where we need to go. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Next up is Vice Mayor Fligor.
Thanks, Larry. And it's hard, and thanks for all the comments. And it's hard to follow Rich, so I won't even attempt to do that. I hope all of you saw the letter that Chappie, Rich, and I wrote to the editor, to the Mercury News editor. And we saw that letter as just starting the conversation. We do take our roles very seriously as the 3 African-American city council members in Santa Clara County. And so we've been talking for the last week about how can we identify specific things. So again, moving away from the symbolic and the first steps that so many of us have taken this past week, and actually get some action and changes done in our communities. And so the resolution that you have before you, it was put together quickly today, and it covers a lot of the police reforms that we were already talking about and something that we talked about in a small group. We talked about a couple other things that we just weren't able to pull them together and have them ready for you today. And I tried to put something quickly, but Rich wants to comment on a couple things. But the area is just for you to think about, even if we don't incorporate it into the resolution, that we have talked about in different ways. You can help to make a difference and to help move this change forward are one, supporting the development of BMRs in your communities, eliminate any policies that may result in or promote housing discrimination, support mental health and healthcare programs. And one way you can do that is just allocate funding to mental health care programs that would help all communities. And then the third thing that we've talked about is ensuring that you support the different business groups in your city. You know them and ensure that all business communities, all business groups feel welcomed and supported in your communities. I don't know if we want to incorporate these additional 3 things in the resolution. I know Chappie, Rich, and I believe there's a lot more we can and should and will do. And so maybe that will be in step 3, but I really want to thank everybody for your support. I support this resolution. We hear you, and I'm very excited to hear that you feel the way we do, where talking is not enough. Signing pledges is not enough. Adopting resolutions is not enough. It's what you do next and how you implement that really will bring the change to make it sustainable and long lasting. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Nisa. Next up is Councilmember Matano.
Thank you, Chairperson. I do agree with Mayor Constantine. Actions speak louder than words. And in Milpitas, we are a very unique city because we had, were one of the first planned integrated neighborhoods in the country. That was when Ford Motor came in. There was a lot of discrimination and racism against a lot of the workers. So what the Ford Motor Company did, and the Quakers, is they formed a co-op and they formed a neighborhood. So these folks, these workers, assembly workers, can have housing. So this is back in the late 1950s. So we're very unique in that. So we have a very diversified community. And our chief of police at that time was Chief Murray, and that was back in the 1950s. And he was the one that set the foundation for our police, how our police interact with the community. And it's always been, the community always, it's been a good relationship with that community. And I remember Chief Murray at one time said, no free coffee. He didn't want any of his officers to get any free coffee from any of the restaurants or whoever, the mom and pop shops that offered them. So, he had very high standards, and those high standards are still with our police. So those actions working with the community are still there. So the Milpitas community, they love their officers, they love their first responders. And when they hear things of defunding, it really bothers them, because one of our first priorities as a city council is public safety. And that's probably every one of your cities, right? And every one of you, I'm pretty sure that that's your #1 goal. So just wanted to let you know that our city is unique. And action, we've been doing these, working with the community for a very long time. We have a good relationship. And if anything, and I do know for a fact that any officer that does get out of line, they are dealt with in a very harsh way. So our mayor has not signed on to the reform, and has said his stance is every city, has a different uniqueness about them. So our city, like I mentioned, our mayor has not signed on, but because we are unique, and like I said, I also wanted to mention, we are the first city to have an elected African-American mayor. So this was back in the 60s. So it's been ongoing. So Milpitas is unique. It's we're very fortunate. We did have a march with the Milpitas High School Black Student Union and the teachers, and it was very peaceful. So and we have a good relation. The community has a good relationship with the police officers, and they're very well trained. And our chief does send them to trainings such as cultural competency and mental illness, because that's a big issue when dealing with mental ill folks that are out there, especially with our growing homeless population. But I will say that our police is very they're very professional, and if there's any changes that can be made, they will be made. But I think the word reform connotates that there's something wrong, and right now I commend our police. They work well with the community. So anyway, like I said, our mayor has not signed on, and he feels that every city has the right to not to sign on, because we're already producing those results. As the mayor said, actions speak louder than words, and we've been doing that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for your comments. You know, definitely these are difficult times for everyone, and especially for the community that who feels that they've been unheard for so long. And I think that's a big thing. I'm happy to see, you know, the young people that are really starting these rallies and, you know, helping to organize. And we have, you know, young and old, and across all of our communities coming to join and carry on this dialogue. And I think that's the important thing is making sure that there's a dialogue. And Carmen, as much as you say, and I want to talk to your mayor, because as much as you say that, you know, I think the pledge to me was really important, because reform doesn't mean that you're going to change everything, but I think every organization has room for change and improvement. So I do think that that's very important. And comment, yeah, sorry, thank you. Gilroy Mayor Kat Tucker.
Gilroy had to be different and call me Mayor Pro Tem, but it's the same as Vice Mayor.
Sorry about that.
I almost put Vice Mayor, and I thought, well, my card says Mayor Pro Tem. So there's so much to be said, and I can't, you know, I embrace all of what you guys are saying, and especially, you know, Black Lives Matter. We in South County, we're lucky, both in Morgan Hill and in Gilroy, had very peaceful marches, and no big outbreak of violence or anything like that, or even anger. Obviously, you know, it's something that we have to take action on. Immediately, I did talk to our police chief and said, okay, what are you doing with the 8 Can't Wait? And he immediately put out a thing on social media that addressed all the 8 points. And we don't do all 8, but we do quite a few of them. We already do de-escalation training and a bunch of stuff. Our chief has always had coffee with the police once a month and has built a rapport with the community, but we can do better. And we do have that, I don't know how to say cardivide, I don't know how to say it, but I'm pushing. Carotid.
There you go.
That's the one thing that they do. They keep saying it's a legal thing that the state does. And I'm pushing, but I can tell you that sometimes I'm the minority on our council. Many times there are 4-3 votes on our council. And but I have a lot more support this time around for pushing to get that you know, on the agenda, to get it voted on, to get rid of it. And so there are people taking action. It's just sometimes maybe we're not as verbal. Maybe we just have to take that action to fit our unique communities, like the council member from Milpitas said. And I can assure all of you that we will be supportive of everyone, and whatever ideas we can do to share to take those actions is better than no ideas at all. I'm the vice mayor, and I can tell you right now, I have no clue whether my mayor signed that thing. He is not very communicative. So, I mean, each community have our own issues within ourselves. And as long as we speak out, I did a video just this week, but as long as we individually speak out and try to influence our fellow council members and our community leaders, things can change. It just takes time, but we need to do it, and we need to be out there because we are the leaders, right? So I just want to share with Mayor Rich, I'm very supportive of you, and anything that I can do to push things forward on my council, I'm here, and I'll be glad to do meetings and whatever you suggest. And as a local, South County person, to be right here with you. I have grown children, and they all marched in everywhere, and then they come here for my husband's birthday. I'm like, where are your masks? Because I have a vulnerable husband that could be very ill if something happened, if he were to get the virus, but we still want to go out there and show our support. So anyways, I just wanted to share that we are doing things in the background. Maybe it just is not in the forefront, but of course we can always do better. That's all I want to share.
Thank you very much, Kat. And with that, let's go ahead and loop back to Chappie and the resolution.
Okay. First of all, I want to say that particularly when Rich was talking, he did just an incredible job of articulating a lot of my feelings and emotions. When we're talking about police conduct and some of the actions of the police, it's really the symptom. It's not the disease. The disease is the original sin of this country, which is slavery and racism. And that's why Nisa, Rich, and I keep harping on the fact that we need to do concrete measures and pursue concrete policies and measures that are going to have a meaningful impact. And if we don't do that, then again, this problem and this original sin is just going to continue. I wish you guys can kind of understand that when we see police brutality in videos, that's on top of the day-to-day microaggressions that we experience, the discrimination that we experience. I was talking to my son the other day about an experience he had when he was in high school, and he was going to a tutor, and I went to pick him up, and it was later at night. The sun had gone down. It was at night, and he was waiting for me, and he sat down on a park bench. And there was a white woman that was sitting on that bench, and as soon as he sat down, she got up and moved away. And I remember the look on his face when he told me that story. And if you know my son, he is one of the nicest, gentlest, easygoing people that you ever want to meet. But the fact that he had that experience, it had an impact, a psychological impact. And if you look at the lives of my African-American brothers and sisters, their lives are full of those day-to-day situations and incidents. And it builds up, it wears you down, it's tiring. And people are saying, enough, we can't take it anymore. We want to be treated with respect and dignity and treated like a human being, like everyone else. And I just want to articulate that and let you know where a lot of this is coming from. It's generations of pain, frustration, and anger. And it's coming out. And we need to do something about it. We need to address it. We need to solve the problem. So Larry, I guess the next step is there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. And let's have a vote.
Okay. I'd be happy to do that. Andy?
Got it. Sorry about that. We have a motion to approve the resolution on Black Lives Matter. Motion is by Vice Mayor Jones and second by Councilmember Liz Ness. Is that correct?
I think it was Mayor Constantine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Liz.
Rich did it.
Okay. I got all jumbled there after Rich spoke. Sorry about that. Campbell,
Aye.
Cupertino,
Aye.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Los Altos,
Yes.
Los Altos Hills,
Aye.
Los Gatos,
Aye.
Milpitas,
Abstain.
Montessorino, Morgan Hill,
Aye.
Mountain View,
Aye.
Palo Alto,
Liz?
Liz.
She's still
All
here.
right. Aye. Excuse me.
San Jose,
Aye.
Santa Clara,
Aye.
Saratoga,
Aye.
Sunnyvale.
Aye.
Motion passes. One abstention. One absent. 13 ayes.
Did you miss Los Gatos?
No, no.
Oh.
She
Oh.
said, I have
Sorry,
a,
Marika.
again, I'd love to know specifics. Like there are specific items with police. I loved how Nisa shared about housing policies. Is there an ability for a subcommittee on this group to look at what else can cities do? Because unless we look at every single department within our institutions and what policies are in place that are causing a lot of these injustices, I think we're not doing enough. So I appreciate the words. And so I'd love to see if there's people who would like to form a subcommittee. I think we all have different characters in our council. We've talked about that. Sometimes there is an ability to help one another to move things along. I certainly would appreciate that. And so I'd like to see if there's anyone that would be willing to form a committee. It could be however informal, to see what else we can do.
I would love to serve on a housing policy committee.
I think that's important, Mariko. Let's Andy poll. I'll let you poll the members and figure out, who's interested in this committee and looking at different things that we can do, and conceivably see if there's a lot of interest, going back and saying, is it a portion of it housing? Is it a portion of it police enforcement? I do think, summarizing what our cities are doing and conceivably also the outreach. A lot of our cities are committing to outreach to figure out what measures we need to take. And I think that's part of this dialogue. So capturing that from a cities association standpoint allows each of us, if we have, it allows us to basically cross-pollinate good ideas or good practices. But it also is important that if one city is doing something and we want to take it to our fellow council members, it's like this, or city manager, this is a great idea. That's important too. So Andy, I'll give you that task on top of all your other tasks right now.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mariko. Okay. And thanks everyone for this frank discussion. I know it's not easy right now for anyone, for council members, for all the people in our communities. There's a lot of discussion, and this is built up and only amplified by people that have been forced to stay inside for 3 months and now going out for rallies and social distancing. It's there, and it's just communities in our underserved communities that often haven't been heard, and it's a trigger point, but it's an important point that we can make change right now, and hopefully this does cause long-term change in our communities. So with that, next up is the Executive Director report. Andy?
Boy, kind of hard to follow all of that, guys. So I just had a couple of things that I wanted to mention to you. The mayors have still been meeting monthly or weekly with Supervisor Chavez and Jeff Smith. And the mayors did send a letter on the loss of ERAF funding. And I won't go into the specifics of that. If you want to know any specifics, I'm going to defer to Steve Preminger. But it is a significant amount of funding to the county and to all of our cities. Also, at the executive board meeting last week, the executive board gets in the little nitty gritty more of the ins and outs of running the association. And we've been working on our organizational status issue. And as you all may or may not recall, we thought that we had this resolved toward the end of last year with the IRS, and then the IRS called us back up and said, sorry, just joking, it's not resolved. And so we have an attorney now working with our accountant, and we've come up with a couple of proposals. And the executive board asked us to do a little bit more work before we bring it forward to you. But I just wanted to let you know that we're still working on it. And hopefully we will have a resolution soon. I guess I've been saying that for 3 years now, right? And then the last thing is on the SCSC roundtable. The roundtable had a meeting in May and were informed by the 3 jurisdictions of Santa Cruz. So Santa Cruz County, and Capitola informed us that it was likely they would no longer be members of the roundtable due to COVID-related budget impacts. And because of that, it set off a whole bunch of querying with the FAA and the congressional offices that without those jurisdictions, would the FAA still support the roundtable? Would the congressional offices still support it? It appears that everyone will still support the roundtable, but it will be a Santa Clara centric roundtable. It also looks like that Monte Sereno will not join either. This will be a budget impact to the roundtable of a little more than 25%. And then through the discussions, the executive board has asked the roundtable to evaluate how they can become independent or find another fiscal agent. The roundtable was never meant to live with the cities association. We were just supposed to help stand it up. And so the executive board has asked the roundtable to check back in 6 months and to see how they can either become independent or find a new fiscal agent. And that is all I have. Anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the, sorry, I got out of order, Kent. The city manager's report. Kent?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we had a joint meeting today with San Mateo County and Santa Clara County city managers, and our topic was Caltrain governance and funding. Caltrain, as you can imagine, has a huge funding shortfall. Its ridership has dropped 95%. They did get some funding through the Federal CARES Act, but essentially their CEO told us that unless they get additional federal funding, they'll run out of money by September. They are considering a 1/8 cent sales tax measure. They're doing polling on it now. Getting that on the ballot is complicated because it goes on in 3 counties and there's 7 different boards or bodies of elected officials that have to approve it to get it on in all 3 counties. So that's still being considered. If it were passed, it would provide about $100 million of funding per year ongoing for Caltrain. And so they're hopeful, but they, again, are doing polling right now to see if it has a likelihood of passing. I think that's it. That was our main issue this month.
Okay, thank you very much. I see no members. Oh, there is a new member of the public.
Well, no,
Oh.
I don't think they want to say anything.
Okay. Okay, never mind. So we will move on to adjournment. Thank you everyone for staying late. I thought we were actually going to, come in on time. That being said, I think it was important to have these discussions tonight. It's a little cathartic for us to kind of discuss how the issues, especially for the last 3 or 4 months, the issues that are really facing us on a daily basis. And I think this is a great forum to figure out the best way forward. So thank you very much. We'll be adjourning until August 13th. Have a good night. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.